is a real pleasure being here in this wonderful setting and with all of you folks that have gathered here to support the work of the League of Women Voters. It has been an exciting 93 years, and it has been particularly exciting last couple of years. And as we start, since this is Susan B. Anthony, the Susan B. Anthony Luncheon, I just wanted to note all of the wonderful posters up here at the front of the room. Susan B. Anthony, as some of you may know, was the president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. When she was no longer able to perform those functions, she passed the torch to Carrie Chapman Catt. And it was Carrie Chapman Catt who, in 1919, proposed a living memorial to the suffrage movement, that being a League of Women Voters, to finish the fight for suffrage and make the nation safe for democracy. In 1920, as has been pointed out, the League was founded. Carrie Chapman Catt was not our first president. She was always an honorary president, but our first president was Maud Wood Park. And in 1923, 90 years ago, Mrs. Park, they were always Mrs. back in the day, laid out the platform of the League of Women Voters and called upon its members to organize a campaign for active citizenship such as this country has never known before. We must sell the idea of voting to every possible voter. We must get out the vote. Well, 1923, just like 2013, was not a federal election year. Selling the idea of voting with no high-profile races to focus the public attention must have seemed at once daunting and perhaps a little trivial. But Mrs. Park continued. She says, don't be skeptical, because what we are asking of the average citizen appears to be a small thing. If everybody did that much, or that little, we should have no occasion to worry about our national future. The success of democracy doesn't depend on a few persons doing great things, but upon many persons doing small things faithfully. By 1923, millions of women voters were changing the face of American democracy. In 2013, we have seen a new majority, a very diverse new majority of voters that is emerging, which promises once again to change the face of our politics. This coalition of voters offers the League an exciting opportunity to once again sell the idea of voting to every possible voter. Over the past 2 years, the League has demonstrated that we can sell that idea and create a more representative electorate. So let's take a moment and let's review the achievements of our campaign to power the vote in 2012. In the area of voter protection, leagues in 5 states succeeded in blocking voter photo ID laws. 4 state leagues went to court to overturn or delay implementation of these restrictive ID laws. In state houses and courthouses, leagues successfully stopped efforts to limit independent voter registration drives. In 8 states, including Ohio, leagues worked for fair and more representative redistricting. And on election day, leagues all over the country went to the polls to observe and assist voters and elections administrators alike to make election 2012 work. In the lead-up to the election, leagues worked tirelessly to register new voters. Through the high school voter registration project that was funded by the National League, 8,500 students in 166 schools were registered last spring in more than 20 diverse communities. In addition to the nationally funded program, local league volunteers registered high school students in more than 200 communities nationwide, including here in Ohio. Through another nationally funded program, leagues also registered young adults at community colleges, vocational and technical schools, and other alternative educational institutions. Once again, outside that nationally funded program, leagues in 200 additional communities focused on registering voters in these often overlooked institutions. Through another nationally funded program, leagues registered new citizens to vote at naturalization ceremonies. In Houston, Texas alone, 10,000 new citizens were given the opportunity to register and to participate in last year's election. On National Voter Registration Day, the league had the largest on-the-ground effort with over 240 leagues participating. The result was over 300,000 new voters were registered on that day alone. We provided voter education through vote411.org, which had over 2.5 million visitors, 1 million of those between November 5th and 6th alone. We were able to provide basic candidate information down through State House in all 50 states online to any voter who came to vote411.org, and in 250 additional communities in 30 states that voters had access to detailed candidate information for every candidate on their ballot. 6,000 partners linked to vote411.org. Leagues conducted hundreds of candidate-issue forums and distributed more than 2 million printed voter guides and educational materials. As the league powered the vote for the 2012 election, we reminded voters over and over again that your vote is your voice. Now that those votes have been cast, it is time to make policy decisions that reflect the true diversity of our communities. And to make that happen, voices of active, engaged citizens are urgently needed. To realize the power of the vote, we must raise our voices and demand accountability. The League was founded not just to register newly enfranchised women voters, but to also integrate those voters into the political process. We have become a trusted source of information on both electoral and policy issues because we accomplish our mission by relying on facts and in the belief that knowledge is power. Never before in my lifetime has that trust in knowledge and facts been more desperately needed. The new majority that is emerging in America is just now finding its voice. On many issues, these new voters are in line with the League and are carefully considered positions. They see a positive role for government in protecting the fundamental rights of our citizens, protecting our environment, and providing for basic human needs. The role the League played in empowering women voters in the past is equally relevant now. First and foremost, the League has fought hard to keep politicians from silencing this new majority. The fight to keep states from erecting barriers to the vote is far from over. Already we are seeing legislatures convening in the states and debating laws to create new restrictive ID requirements, eliminate same-day registration in states that have it, and even dismantle, very nearby in Wisconsin, even dismantle their very successful nonpartisan government accountability board that has been so successful in making Wisconsin's elections some of the best in the country. Next week, the Supreme Court will hear oral arguments in the case of Shelby County, Alabama versus Holder. The issue in that case is the constitutionality of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. It was through that Section 5 that the League successfully challenged voter ID laws in Texas and South Carolina and defeated efforts to cut back early voting in Florida. If Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act is struck down, states will have even greater opportunities for mischief in the area of voter protection. The President has eloquently framed the issues of long lines and polls as a threat to our most fundamental right, and then unfortunately kicked the can of reform down the road to two partisan litigators as though the issue is one for the parties to settle. The League stood up recently and reminded the President and the public that keeping our elections free, fair, and accessible to all means making the process work for voters. We know why voters wait long lines every 4 years. Let's fix that problem by making voter registration permanent, by making it portable within the states. Let's adapt our antiquated, paper-heavy registration process and create secure online voter registration. Let's take the pressure off Election Day by creating standards for the states for early voting periods and find